local bill. Mike, do you want to come and give us a bit of background on this? Mike and Robert.
Will join us in a few moments. So this council will recall that Riccarton Racecourse was identified in the LERP as an exemplar area for housing, and you'll also recall that towards the end of last year, council considered a report based on some work, interaction with Ngāi Tahu, who are looking at potentially the form and nature of development to see whether it would qualify as an exemplar project. And at that stage, the council said, yes, it's well on the way. It's not an exemplar project, but you know, keep having those discussions. As far as we know, those discussions are continuing to happen. And the exemplar status was simply, at the time when the LERP was established, was a mechanism to try and provide alternative pathways to get development happening. So it was really aimed at basically saying, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, we may be able to short track some of those discussions. One of the key issues, one of the perhaps more pragmatic issues for the Riccarton Racecourse is that, and Carolyn or Robert can explain in more detail, is that it's subject to its own piece of legislation. And so one of the first things that needs to be done, if it is to make any progress, is to have that legislation amended to allow land to be used for purposes other than racecourse and racing purposes. The Minister, Nick Smith, in his new role, both as the Minister for the Environment, and what's the else he's Minister for? I can't remember. Building and Housing. But
not conservation.
But not conservation. Met earlier this year with the council and said, I'm really interested in this, and I'm going to, met with the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and indicated that that MB were very keen to facilitate the change to the legislation that required a local purpose bill, and then also looking, he was exploring new mechanisms and different mechanisms to facilitate the development of that and to establish some higher density urban outcomes. So there was a process by which he as Minister was showing interest in delivering, I suppose, on the LERP objectives for higher density housing. An area had been identified, it was able to be serviced. It did require a process to be gone through for a piece of legislation to be entered and amended to enable that to occur, and that requires the council to be prepared to support a local purpose bill before the House to make that happen. So that's the genesis of this report. This report brings that back, and so we're seeking your approval to pursue that course of action. And Pat.
Just got a question around the infrastructure. If we allow this to proceed, is there any infrastructure constraints on this being developed into residential? In other words, like we've got other areas where some of our infrastructure is at 99% and we can't allow any more development. So all I'm just flagging is this an area that would be affected by that constraint?
So from the previous discussions that we've had around the exemplar process, which this proposal was within, my recollection is that the one area that is of some concern, particularly from NZTA, is around the strategic roading network, Yoldhurst Road, and I don't recall that there are any particular council infrastructure matters that are unable to be addressed.
Just on that, then, what are the constraints of the road network that could be a problem?
It's the additional traffic that would go that would be moving onto Yoldhurst Road in particular.
Just on the exemplar status of this project, going back to the 27th of November, obviously some concerns were expressed at that time around whether the project was likely to meet the requirements of the exemplar status and what that meeting would look like. Mike, in his introduction this morning, says, you know, as far as we know, discussions around the issues that we raised on the 27th of November are continuing to happen. The first line of paragraph 2.3, whether in pursuit of the exemplar project or referred as a specific project under the Housing Accord, also suggests that there continues to be a question around the exemplar status, and it may well be that the reason that some of us have supported this in principle to date is because of the affordable housing component of the exemplar project. It may be that support wouldn't be so forthcoming for a project that didn't deliver those objectives. Is there any update on this? Because I think it's relevant to the debate that we're having today.
I think there's... Yeah. Yes, so as the Deputy Mayor's outlined, that's the case, and I think he's also indicated some interest in the timing of delivery on this, speed of delivery. So and there's been discussions about, you know, how they might the Riccarton Racecourse trustees will need to sign up to actually delivering certain numbers by certain timeframes, etc. So some of those things are certainly very much in the frame of the minister, as we understand it. Whether that then formally follows the exemplar model, or whether in fact the model shifts, because the opportunity is for them to have the changes to the legislation to allow them to use the land, but also then the Riccarton Racecourse trustees could presumably, or a third party on their behalf, could seek a private plan change as part of the district plan review and process the change to the zoning and the provisions through that mechanism as well.
So the fact that the Minister has made those comments, particularly around affordability, that a third will be affordable, does that then meet the affordability criteria for the exemplar project? Like, would that be defined as the same thing that we would expect to see around affordability through the exemplar?
Yes, yes.
The change was the density. There are fewer houses than in the original proposal as well. There's about 200 fewer when they announced. So Ngāi Tahu have become the development partner in this, which is a step forward as well, and they are very keen to go fast and to make them affordable. So I've got Yanni, Phil, Paul. Yanni.
So I'm just interested in how 450,000 is seen as affordable.
Well, that's probably not a question you can ask us. I mean, that's the government has their home start threshold, which is set at around that figure. So I think that's the threshold, the figure that they were using. So the third of the properties had to be eligible for the government's home start, or whatever it's called, package.
Right, but yeah, no, I know that. But so we have no advice around what we would consider affordable in Christchurch at the moment. Like, we don't compare it to people's income.
Well, I suppose at this point, those drivers are being driven by the Minister and his discussions with the Riccarton Racecourse community. What we're being asked to do is to support a bill to enable the land to become available for housing.
Well, actually for affordable housing, and that's...
No, it's not for affordable housing. The bill is around actually releasing the land.
Okay, so I'm just reading 3.8, that the development of the site is, you know, to be around the 3.8, the affordable housing. Legislative powers to secure 30% of total number of homes delivered as affordable homes. So, but what I'm struggling to understand is how 450,000 is affordable, because it's it's definitely not. I mean, I haven't seen any evidence that says that that's affordable. I don't know do you know what the size of these homes will be? Will they be like 1-bedroom homes or 2? We did see quite a lot.
Yeah.
But
So-
we did see quite a lot in the exemplar.
Well, we did see a lot, but I think, as the Deputy Mayor's outlined, I think there's things have travelled quite a bit since that time, and obviously different parties are looking at how they're going to deliver the outcome, what it's going to look like.
Okay.
The message, I suppose, that we've received from the Minister is that he's interested in that sort of 30% of affordability as the Crown defines it, and obviously he's a key player in this, but also that these are achieved in a timely manner. So we're having to take that at face value at this stage. The first step in the process for us is actually, will we support a bill going forward to enable this land to become available for residential use, potentially? And there's a whole lot of steps behind that to make that a reality.
So I think the bigger question for me is there any need for this land to be rezoned to housing, given how much land we've already got currently zoned for housing, particularly in the central city and in some of the other greenfield areas that still hasn't been developed on? And we've had partnerships with the Minister and with the government and Ngāi Tahu before, and we haven't seen those houses being developed in the timeframes that they've agreed. So why do we need to develop this ahead of those being complete?
Well, I think that there are still, so there's potentially a number of ways you can answer that, and I suppose from our perspective, in a global sense, the market will decide what needs to be available, and the uptake will be dependent on how the market responds to that. But I think, as we've said, as far as we understand from the Minister's intention, there will be quite set deliverable dates, so they will see houses coming onto the market. We do know it will be a higher density, and certainly some of the early stuff, and admittedly it's only the early stuff that we've seen, is of that sort of more higher density typology with multiple units and joined apartments and townhouses. So we will be seeing, perhaps one of the comforts we could take is that we're getting a delivery of some type of medium density housing within a time frame that actually offers something different by way of housing typology. So how the market will respond to that, obviously we can't predict that, but at least it provides a different offering in the market and potentially an offering with some real time frames around it.
Some of the response, I was interested about the affordability too, but I just wondered about the community interest part in this, and that I understand, for example, there are some residents in the near vicinity, and this refers to part 7.1 and the third bullet point down on page 346. Just that, so what we're doing though is that community concerns about the development would now need to go to government, and so this is an area where, in fact, by deciding this today, those residents' concerns won't be addressed by council.
No, not at all. It's important to understand what the decision the council is being asked to make today, and the decision is purely to promote a local bill to be introduced into Parliament to enable or to change the statutory trust upon which the land is held. The bill doesn't allow the development. It doesn't mean that the land will be developed. It's just one of the steps along the path that will be required to ensure that happens. But along the path, and starting at this point, when the local bill is introduced to Parliament, it will go to a select committee. There'll be ample opportunity for public consultation. There'll be resource consent processes required, plan change processes required. Again, ample opportunity for public consultation. So there's a whole range of steps that are required in the future. This particular decision is a very narrow, limited one that you're asked to make today, and that's why we've made the significance assessment that we have in paragraph 7. Plenty of public consultation to follow.
Public consultation by government?
By government, through government
So
process. And through the council plan change process.
So I think what I signalled earlier is that our understanding is that the trustees would then seek a private plan change through the review of the district plan to undertake the actual rezoning of the land, and obviously that has a submission process and a further submission process. So people will be able to participate in that manner.
Thanks for that reassurance. And
Can we just
clarify that. So when that goes out, people will have the normal rights, not the current sort of.
Well, in many respects, the current rights are not, at that point in the process, are not that dissimilar to normal rights. There will be a full submission period. There will be a full further submission period.
Right, okay.
So those will be there.
And it will be publicly notified and all
Well,
those things.
if that's the direction of travel, and that's how we understand it, that the responsibility for the trustees will be in concert with this, presumably, because they'll need to get their skates on, will be to develop and lodge a private plan change, anticipating the local bill going through.
And just one further question. I'm assuming from what you've said that in 532 on page 345 that the minister who would sponsor this would be the MP who would sponsor this. Is it likely to be the minister, Nick Smith?
Yes. The draft bill has his name on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I assume that if this should all go through, the trust would then sell the land, or will they still retain that land? What's the...
I'm sorry, I don't know we're not privy to the details of how those financial arrangements between the trust, Ngāi Tahu, as the iwi, have certain rights in this process if it gets sold, but we don't know those details.
Because my question really from that is around 6.1, that they're offering to contribute to the cost of the bill. Is that appropriate?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's not a council-driven bill. We're being asked to participate and assist the process.
Well, the words in here say promote.
Yes, that's the
Is that all right?
technical...
The legal term.
It's the legal terminology, but our interest is merely as the local authority. We don't have a financial interest. We're not going to make any money out of this. So the trustees who are should pay.
Right, so should they pay for the whole
Trustees
thing?
can't promote it.
Should they then pay for the whole thing? Not just contribute to it? Because there's other costs besides that 2,000.
Well, the $2,000 is the direct cost that has to be paid to the clerk of the House's office on introduction of the bill.
So
there will be staff costs as well. But,
well, my question is, should they pay for all of those costs?
Well, I suppose in some respects this is around how do you treat this in terms of recovery. We've had to do a little bit of work to facilitate this. The drafting of the bill's largely been done by the Parliamentary Council. They will carry the lodgement fees. The process of the bill going through its passage will be presumably carried by Parliament in some way or by the government. I think yes, we could look to recover some of the costs that we've expended to date, but I think they'd be relatively minor in the schemes of things, and really, is it actually worth pursuing? I don't know that it is.
So staff will negotiate how much that they will contribute to that 2,000?
No, that cost is being paid by the trustees. The council is not funding that.
Okay, so 6.1 says they would contribute, so...
Well, they'll pay that, and
they're going to pay
the council's contribution is the staff time.
Okay, thank you.
My question's really for the strategy and planning of the city and the lateral spread of people and opening up more green fields where we're not actually intensifying the brown fields, and our wish to have 20,000 people in the city centre. So the question really is, do you think, with this large amount of land made available, is that going to impact our desire to intensify our brownfields?
Well, arguably, this could be seen as a form of brownfields because, of course, it is within the existing city framework, so it actually supports that whole western end of Yaldhurst, and it's between Hornby and sort of, I suppose, coming north through to Rustley, so it's actually inside the urban frame. I mean, we have promoted through our living G zones, we do promote higher levels of density in suburban areas, so not all our density needs to be in the centre. And at the end of the day, I don't think the role of council is to say, actually, we're going to squeeze everything else to try and achieve something, because I think the limited ability to actually make that happen becomes quite limited. So what we need to do is be confident that actually the level of intensity of development here is appropriate for that area. It can be managed, and then it becomes part of the suite of, I suppose, offerings to the market. And actually getting some breadth in the market has also been one of our objectives.
I see that under the 7 assessment, you talk about it being low significance, and particularly around possible cost, risk to council, ratepayers and wider community of carrying out the decision. So none have been identified, but I would have thought this has a pretty big impact on race day, on Riccarton Market, on all the other activities that happen there.
No.
Trustees have been assiduous, I think would be the word, in terms of protecting everything that they need for the operation of racing.
So when you look
including, by the way, the horse swimming pool.
When you look at the red, my understanding from Cup Day is, or Race Day, that whole area has huge amounts of car parking and people. So I'm kind of puzzled as to why you would need that whole extent of that area for this development.
The trustees to identify.
So the trustees have identified that actually when they look at the car parking, because they've got pictures of it out there,
Right.
that they can fit them in, because they're all over the place, that they can fit them into the area that they've got. So the trustees are very focused on racing. Everything that they need for racing, for Cup Day, and for the whole industry of racing, which they tell me is the same as the wine industry, is in terms of the value to the country, has been protected. And actually there's a massive amount of stuff that they've got out there. I was quite surprised.
And then the traffic assessment. So when will we be in a position to see the traffic assessment? Because I don't personally believe that we can deal with that through the bill thing. So I would have thought it has a pretty
It's part of
significant
the district
traffic
plan review
impact.
process, the plan change process. That would a traffic assessment would be needed as part of that. It would not form part of the material that you're considering today.
Right, but if there's big strategic picture is that our traffic networks can't cope with that amount of development in this space, I would have thought that's pretty significant to the cost to the ratepayers.
That's a matter for the plan change process. This decision is simply, do we promote a bill that changes the statutory trusts that govern the use of the land? Those issues will be dealt with through the plan change process to follow.
Yeah, and I think there was a question of significance. And all I'm asking is, given that the traffic issue is significant and it hasn't been identified in here, why not?
This isn't the planning document. This isn't the document that will provide the plan change or the resource consent to enable the development to happen. This is just simply a decision to change the statute, or just to assist the process to change the statutory trusts that govern the use of the land. It doesn't mean any development will actually happen on this land.
Just one further quick question, sorry. The need for this project obviously was identified through the LURP, the desirability of it was identified through the LURP. We, at that time, obviously identified a need for housing of this sort of intensity on this type of brownfield development. We're now hearing in some quarters that there's a potential for oversupply of housing as early as 2017. How does the timing of this proposal tie in with that? Because, again, approving something to solve a housing shortage, a housing crisis now is one thing. Approving something that contributes to a further potential oversupply of housing as early as 2017 makes it a very different question.
So I think, again, come back to the core that this is empowering and creates opportunity. So I think, as through the LURP, and I suppose through the particular tool of the exemplar, this was seen as a large piece of land, a good opportunity to realise some new development and additional housing development. And of course, you'll realise around the country that, in fact, many racecourses have, again, for different reasons, realised some of their land assets. So you only have to go to Green Lane or around Alexandra Park or Hutt Course Raceway to see, or Addington to see, absolutely, yes, you only have to go up the road to see that that's how, what is happening around those as, again, these sort of requirements change. Again, I suppose I see that in terms of, I would answer that in terms of saying, there's an issue for the potential developers to go into that with. So certainly if there's going to be timeframes around delivery, then that's going to be quite a key issue if the proponents of any formal development are going to be saying, well, actually, I've got a 2, 3 year and 5 year horizon for delivery. If I don't think I can sell those because there'll be an oversupply, am I really going to engage with this? So there may be a degree to which that is self-managing. But equally, we also know that this is an area of the city that is relatively well placed for further development. It's surrounded by modern infrastructure. It's surrounded by good access to the airport, to other parts of the city. So this may become quite, it may still, in spite of the global issue around supply, it may still be a very successful development.
Cool. Thank you. I won't be supporting this. I think I can't see the need for this land to be rezoned now. We've actually spent a huge amount of time rezoning a number of areas for residential development, and sadly what we haven't seen is housing being built on those sites. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. We're always told, well, leave it to the market. The market isn't delivering affordable housing, and just rezoning more land, and particularly for affordable housing at $450,000, which I do not believe is affordable. And I really challenge, the idea that you simply give people greater subsidies to buy more expensive housing as having any positive impact on the housing affordability in our city, which this proposal seems to be based on. So I can't see the need to get rid of valuable reserve land such as a racecourse, certainly to this extent. I hear that we've heard advice that the trustees have said they don't think it'll have any negative impact on like Riccarton Market or on the races that they have there. I know from personal experience, having attended some of those events more recently, when they had Japan Day and Riccarton Market at the same time, you just think about the traffic impact that it currently has now, the traffic issues, and you think of all this being high-density residential. Like, it seems baffling, the extent that's being proposed. So I can't support this. I didn't support it being a late supplementary item. You've seen that there's a number of questions that I've had on this. That's why I don't think it's good when it doesn't come through a committee or doesn't go through the proper normal process. I understand the government want to do things around housing. We've got a number of things that we're still waiting on them to do in regards to housing in our city, which I would encourage them to help us with, rather than look at these new projects, which I don't think there's a clear business case or rationale for. And I think this will have a big detriment to our central city. We want people to come and live in the central city. Continuously opening up these brownfield or greenfield sites on the fringes of our city doesn't make any sense at all. And I take on board the point that's made that we face an oversupply of land zoned for housing in a few years' time. So why would we be doing this now?
I'm just going to speak first. I think that you've missed the major point. The major point is that what we need are houses. We don't need sections. We have a lot of sections, but this actually requires them to develop housing on it. The bill that made this vested the land in them was, 1876 or something, when this would have been 1878, when this would have been so far away from the centre of town that it would have been amazing to try and develop it. I think the Racecourse trustees have actually done a very good job of looking at what they need for the racecourse and then trying to make their own assets sustainable. If you look at the map, this is a very urban part of Christchurch. It has facilities all around it. It has schools, universities and shopping centres very near. And obviously there will be traffic issues and there will be issues that neighbours raise, and they get the chance to do that. This is not the time that they make their public submissions. But the idea that we would say no to this because we think that these people are all otherwise going to come and live in the centre of town is frankly absurd. These people will go and live in Selwyn and Waimak. We will create more traffic jams going out to Waimak, and we will create more traffic jams going out to Selwyn. I like the idea that where we have unused land and it can be used for housing, we do something about that. And I like the fact that they've actually done an agreement that requires them to deliver in a relatively short period of time, albeit with a lot of process to go through. They can, as I understand it, actually put housing on this now, but they can only lease it for 7 years at a time. And anybody who's dealt with leased land in Christchurch knows that it is the least loved form of land that people buy in Christchurch, because it has all sorts of issues about your future costs. The only way we are going to get people housed in Christchurch is to build houses. Yes, the government is doing stuff with us on Wells Street and Colombo Street, and they'll be making some announcements about that in a couple of weeks. We're starting to dig on the site. Yes, we are doing a major push in terms of becoming a community housing provider. Yes, we're doing all those things, but this actually allows other people to build houses. What's the worst that can happen? We actually reach equilibrium in the market, if there is ever such a thing, because I suspect a whole lot of people coming into Christchurch are going to stay here sooner than we would have otherwise. Fantastic. I would like there not to be a housing problem in Christchurch. That's why I'll be voting in favour of this, because I think, and I know this area very well, it's in my ward, I think it makes perfect sense that it is developed for housing. There is everything that the racing industry needs retained. Even the Riccarton market is retained. So I think this step is absolutely essential. And then the rest, where the public come in and say all of the usual things that we would expect to hear in a changed zone. So I will certainly be supporting it. Glenn.
Thank you. I'll support it too, although I do have some interesting, or rather some questions, as Councillor Johansson does, over the affordability aspect of it. And I'm glad that's the government's definition and they can stay with that. My questions are also surrounding the economic models that have always been used in this recovery, that the laissez-faire approach has been taken, the leave it to the market approach, whereas an interventionist approach was required, and we see aspects of that in this when it talks about speed to clamp down on land banking, etc. So I do have a few questions about it. I still think as a council we have to hold up our end of the bargain and promote this. It's one thing for us to challenge the government over housing and sometimes to receive that the other way, but at the end of it we actually have to work together on it, and we do have to put houses on the ground. I've always pushed on that, so has the various ministers, and we've got a partnership in different ways. One way being through the Accord. I think we just have to keep pushing on it.
Those opposed? Just, do you want that recorded, Yanni? Yanni would like his vote recorded against. Thank you.